The Edge of Wonder presents Contact in the Desert 2018. Special guests featuring Ken Johnston.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, and relating to what you were doing, and we were just seeing some of the photos he was showing. Absolutely amazing.
Okay, well, back in 1966, when I got out of the Marine Corps as a pilot, went to work at the NASA Space Center. It was the Manned Spacecraft Center at the time, and now it's the Johnson Space Center. Offers from 5 of the major corporations, but I went to work for the Grumman Aerospace Corporation that built the Lunar module. I became one of the first 4 civilian astronauts on the Apollo program, and our job was to test the lunar modules, primarily LTA-8, in the vacuum chambers to be sure that it was safe and proper. And once we got that proven out, then we helped train the regular NASA astronauts how to fly the lunar module. So we had the same training as the astronauts did before they got their training, and then we built it up from there. After we landed on the moon, because Nixon came along and said, we're no longer doing research and development, we're doing routine flights to the moon. So they laid off 30,000 employees nationwide just from Grumman alone. Okay, so I went over to the Lunar Receiving Laboratory and became the director of the Data and Photo Control Department. That's how I wound up with the records, the documents, the pictures and things that I kept for 48 years before I started coming public with them, because I kept waiting for the government to come out and show the things that we had really discovered on the moon. One of the things came out as a little bit of a cliche. Everybody says, you know what NASA stands for, NASA? It is not National Aeronautics and Space Administration. It's never a straight answer, okay? So a gentleman by the name of Richard C. Hoagland put out his first book, and he said they was looking for people who had experience with NASA that might have records or information, because right after we finished the Apollo 11, 12, 13, 14, you call them Men in Black or whoever, came around to our homes and asking if we had saved any records or any books or pictures and things like that. My attitude was what my mother had taught me. She said, if you have anything that's of value, save it. It'll be worth something to someone else later on. So my answer to him says, no. And then 30 years later, when I ran into Mr. Hoagland giving a talk in Seattle, he was looking for people that had information. And so I thought, okay, well, it's a good opportunity. I'll take a book in, and one of his books in, and have him autograph it for me. And I went in and walked up to the desk where you buy your tickets and told the lady, oh, here's a letter for Mr. Hoagland, let him. And she looks at the letter, she shakes her hand, she said, you're who we've been looking for. And he came out from the front before the program started, and he looked at it, he says, great, we'll be at your house tomorrow. He came over with the guys, the team, my house, and I pulled out not all the files, hundreds of pictures, originals off the original Nexi, because as the director of the Data and Photo Control Department that I was in, I had access to all the originals. I'm going to put in a little ad here. Let's be sure that anybody who texts their cell phones while they're driving can damage and hurt people, because we got rear-ended from a woman texting when she was driving, and as a result, the whiplash caused a little bit of damage and a little bit of drainage. So someone has to tell me what I was just talking about, and then I can pick up and go. And it's been frustrating because I've gone all over the world giving lectures and talks. So right now, I'm doing my best to keep the shift going. So where were we? We were talking about. I'm serious.
Yeah. We were just talking about the books, the photos. Everything that you were doing, your experience.
I saved those pictures, and then when Mr. Hoagland and them came over to my house, they started looking at the pictures and things, and one of the pictures right there is an excellent one. This is on the front side of the moon, close to the terminal, close to the back side, and what you're looking at is a base on the moon, okay? And I was showing Brett Shepard the pictures of the command modules and telling him, when we took off from the moon and we rendezvoused with the command module, we would kind of do a dance around each other and be sure that it was safe to go ahead and dock. And I'm doing that, and he says, no, look what's on the moon. I said, what are you talking about? And I said, look at this spacecraft. He said, no, I'm an engineer, so I'm looking at the spacecraft. And he's an artist. And artists use a different part of their brain. They look at things and say, my God. So this has been enlarged, and here's a picture of these on the west. You enlarge it, and then blow it up even bigger. Now what you've got is you've got tracks in between that you can see the tracks, particularly like here. So this is on the terminator area, so we can see it. I've just come to the conclusion and belief that because when you lay these things out, they are surveyed in. Now, who does surveying and sets everything in? Humans, right? And in the crater Tsiolkovsky on the backside of the moon, okay, that the Russians were there before we were going with their orbits.
Wow.
In the crater Tsiolkovsky, there's a cluster of 5 domes, bubbles. If you take your hand, your palm up, bring your fingers together, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little bubbles, which were actually domes about the size of the Astrodome football domes, okay, and each one of them had a column of steam coming up, and I was showing that 16 millimeter film to Dr. Thornton Page and 6 other scientists, and it was unbelievable because they were all having a big, in a way, I found out that how did they know that that particular reel of film had that on there? Dr. Page did, because the next day I went and showed the same number reel to the rank and file scientists, and we're approaching Tsiolkovsky, and we get there, and it's dark shadowed in that area. You can't see them. I took the film out in front of everybody. I said, just a moment, we're having technical difficulty. Looked at it, and all the holes lined up and everything else. They had painted out. And I did go back when I checked it back in, into the photo lab. I ran past a light table, 3 foot by 4 foot, with 3 people sitting behind it. Two of them were the guys, and I said, "What?" They were painting things out. We didn't have airbrushing back in those days. We had painting, right? And they were painting it out. And I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, we're professional strippers." And the woman says, no, what we call it is stripping. What we're doing is we're painting out things on the horizon and stuff that would be confusing to people." So right then and there, and I checked it back in, and the next day, I ran into Dr. Page on the way back to the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, and he had a patch over one eye. You'd have to look him up, and because he had lost an eyeball. And I said, "Dr. Page, what happened to those domes and things we found in Tsiolkovsky on the backside of the crater?" He looked at me and he said, "There was never anything there," winked and laughed. And that was kind of my wake-up call that stuff was going on the moon that we were not this kind of wake up to know what was going on.
Right. Wow.
So what I've done now is I've dedicated the rest of my life to getting the facts, the truth, and everything out there. I was attacked by debunkers, if you want to call them that. The number one is James Oberg. So it's dangerous to come forward and start putting out the truth because there are people out there that are try to get you.
So you were saying you were in a car crash. Do you think that was set up?
I can't answer that question. All I know is that the young lady that was driving the car that hit us seemed perfectly normal, healthy, and everything. But the question is controlled.
Exactly.
How do you control somebody like that?
Yeah, we've just been doing some episodes on mind control, actually. Yes, and the technology out there seems to be available.
It would not surprise me because now Oberg was told to back off and leave me alone because every time he's come after me, I've had the records and the documents to prove that there's just a bunch of BS. What they try to do is not with the evidence, if you've seen some here, but they try to discredit the individuals. That's where he said, "Oh, he's a liar, he's doing this," and we have to prove who we are. He said, "Now I don't have to prove much because my records and documents have been out, and you could even take and say, you're telling a bunch of cock. Here's the pictures and the document." If he's calling me a liar, then he's calling all the directors of the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, the Mission Control Room, all the NASA people and governments, that they're liars too, because now the records and the books tell the truth, and I don't have to do it anymore.
Well, thank you so much, Ken. One last question: What motivates you to keep doing what you're doing to let people know the truth?
Well, okay. Part of it came from back. I think I mentioned when Mr. Hoagland came to the deal, and we were talking when they came to the house. My wife's looking at some of the pictures that I had in my archive, my file, and looking in the visor of one of the astronauts on Apollo 14 on the lunar surface, and the reflection in the visor is of a craft hovering up above the guys on the lunar surface, and that was kind of my awakening. And then we were waiting. Well, okay, NASA's going to come out, or the government's going to go out. And so I found it telling the truth, and waited. And now the other thing, another one that I'll tell everybody else. When somebody says, well, "What you need to do is do this, this, and this," and I'll say slap. And they, what? I said, spell it out, SLAP. Sounds like a plan. And that's what we're doing, is the way that the human society, extraterrestrials have been watching us ever since they helped mess with our DNA.
Yes.
And now they're looking for us. They tried to make direct contact with President Eisenhower, again, right after World War II, which a lot of people that do your own research and find out. That's what I tell them. And iterate with Eisenhower and them. They actually wound up making an agreement with a certain group of extraterrestrials. The reptilians is what I understand. Okay, so what you now have is the people are trying to come forward the governments then wouldn't do anything about it. They wanted to maintain control and the power of that. Yet I call it a tsunami. You have a tsunami, a big wave keeps bigger and bigger and bigger until it starts rolling over, coming ashore. This is a tsunami that you're here looking at because there have been millions of people around the world that are experiencers, because ETs have now started going to individuals from every nationality, every country, and the wave has gotten huge. Now, so that behooves the astronauts and those of us that have had actual contact and documents to prove it, up on the top of this crest, nearly getting shot sometimes, and leading the big movement that's going to bring in full disclosure, hopefully by the end of this year, 2018.
Really, you think it's going to be this year?
Absolutely do.
Wow, guys, did you hear that? That sounds pretty exciting.
You'll see it. You'll see it coming ashore. It's coming ashore right now.
It is, definitely. I mean, this is like one of the biggest conferences too. There's a lot of people here.
This is here. Contact in the Desert is the biggest conference in the world for this. Now I've been in Switzerland and all over the smaller conferences and things. So it is, and I'm privileged to be a part of it. And I will continue doing my part to be getting the truth out there. So long as you study and get the truth will set you free.
That's a great quote. Really, we'll end it there on that great quote. Ken, thanks so much for talking to us. Really appreciate it. You're amazing, man. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of The Edge of Wonder. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode from The Edge of Wonder.